Okay, welcome everyone that's joining us today. We are here doing an interview with Krista Jarrard for our upcoming NASC 2020 conference to be held in November in Colorado Springs. And I'm very excited to be interviewing Krista. Welcome, Krista.
Thank you.
I just want to give you guys a brief background about Krista before we ask her some questions. Krista's been an expert in the field of systemic constellation work for over 18 years. She was trained personally by Bert Hellinger, so she is definitely a first-generation elder in the field of constellation work. She has an upcoming book coming out, which is The Radical Active Inclusion, which is the topic of our pre-conference at this November Constellations Conference. And I just want to ask you a bunch of questions, Krista, get to know you, have you get to know our guests that will be coming and those that are not able to come. And let's just have a chat. How's that?
That sounds great. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Welcome. So give us some idea of this topic, the radical active inclusion. It fascinates me. I'm just imagining all of the ways that we do have these acts of inclusion, and there's so much exclusion in society and families, which is really the basis and groundwork of this fascinating constellations work. So tell me how you got into this particular topic first.
Well, probably about 6 years ago, I really started sitting with what was it that made our work so unique. And what I became aware of is there was this core attribute that was never really singled out in a training or spoken about specifically, and that being inclusion. I mean, kind of basically, once we're aware of some of the natural orders that bring resolution, we're working with inclusion. But it's these attributes of that I really started sitting with. And also the fact that we don't work with forgiveness in our work. So that's what kind of really, really engaged me and led me to how I've been developing this book. But it's come so much farther now. When I talk about inclusion, it's not necessarily in relationship to moving beyond the limits of forgiveness, but it's about really what we're always doing as we sit with what shows up in the constellation field, and how that can actually be a practice that we can use for ourselves to guide us. And to keep us out of fields of separation and divisiveness and judgment and blame. So that's, rather than, yeah.
That's important. That's so important in our work. And tell me something. I know that even the subject of forgiveness has some people on either side of this. Should we actually forgive? I know Bert Hellinger had a lot to say about forgiveness and how that really works to really heal some splits in our families.
And I don't ever remember Bert Hellinger talking about forgiveness, actually, because the stance is always when we bring forward what's present, and that can take that level of responsibility that comes from being seen, that strength that comes from being seen and included just as it is, then, he wasn't having people say, please forgive me. We never worked with that. And so that was kind of what got me thinking. And it was in that research. I mean, the first thing I did was, what is the definition of forgiveness? And traditional forgiveness. And it was to give up the need or desire to punish. And as soon as I heard that, it was like, the lights went up for me, because immediately I could feel that the traditional act of forgiveness was emerging from the same field of whatever act it is that needs to be forgiven. So that same victim perpetrator field. And so that's, that's that energetic imbalance that we just don't really engage with. We just go straight to that place of inclusion.
That's very different. I like how you put that. So can you repeat how you actually said that? It's
Let's see. So the definition of forgiveness, if I'm repeating that, so the definition of forgiveness is to give up the need or desire to punish.
wow. That's huge.
It's huge, right? So somebody, we know enough that immediately we can kind of feel that viscerally. And, and so the workshops that I've done around this, we work with that. What I'm going to be talking about here, though, in that pre-conference is actually much more than that. And it's interesting as I go back and revisit this. When I made that submission, the end of last year, that the title, Embodying Our Resources to Stand at the Edge of the Unknown, I've always, I was already in touch with kind of what's happening now. And so, we're really being asked, we're being faced with issues we never would have imagined in this time period. And so I just wanted to sit with what happens when the edge comes to the middle of our being, and how do we embody our humanity? How do we take our place and embody our humanity at this time? So that is where inclusion comes in. We want to include everything that's present, all the attributes of our work that hopefully we do embody to resource us right now. And so, so when we've been with this this pandemic, what is it that we have within us, within our work? That doesn't mean going and doing a constellation, but what's embodied. And one of the first things that I did with this was pull out Bert Hellinger's quotes about being with the mystery. So we should have a practice in a place that our body is familiar with, because every time we start a constellation where we are at the edge of the unknown, we're not working intentional. So I feel like this is, working with that mystery is the art of the constellation, and it's at the heart of our work. So that's one thing I really include right now.
Now, do you bring in other modalities into this constellation work, or have you just kind of refined this active inclusion from constellation?
No, I'm working right now, and the last couple of years, very somatically with my clients. So deep listening, languaging, landing in the body, just allowing people to feel safe. But I'm bringing in my own awareness of the edge states of compassion, and as I said, listening, and empathy, and respect, and integrity. So I think a lot of what I really want to share with the conference is we have so much that can feed us, that can allow us to be the container for the larger unfolding that's happening there. And to, as we anchor into, you know, some foundational principles, it allows that to become a personal practice for us, not just something we do with our clients. But I think that's when I started with that journey of inclusion. That's just like, there's a daily practice with constellation work that's about the principles and the attribute, the art that is not just setting up constellations. It's something that lives within us that I feel like is really here to support us. And certainly, I definitely feel like, you know, in every way, systemic constellations are made for these times, because there are specific things about being with the unknown and trauma, and how the divisiveness is so present. And of course, you know, we know that kind of one of the first things we learn is this about people. So people come first in our work, and beliefs are often seen as that what separates. So,
so apparently
so I'm
now,
talking.
yeah,
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
time of the pandemic, how divisive people are,
Right.
how polarized people are. I mean,
Right.
we need this work more than ever to come together and be inclusive. So
Right.
important.
And because this is such a time of testing, that's big work. You know, we can all see where we can get pulled out of that center, but at least we have that center to come back to.
That's great.
So,
wow, I'm really looking forward to this. Can we shift gears for a second? And
sure.
I want to also piggyback onto that, because you do a lot of astrology as well. And your workshop coming up at the conference is going to be more about astrology, astrological constellations. And I believe the exact title, I'm going to have to read this now, is Taking Our Place in a Larger System of Belonging in a Time of Transformation. Wow. So can you give me some idea of how you got into astrology and how that pertains to these times now that we're in?
Well, I'm a third generation astrologer. So that's how I got in. I was taught by my aunt at the age of 8, and took a break from it for a long time when I realized it was mostly mathematics before we had computers. And then in the 80s, I came back to it. And so I've been a professional practicing astrologer. And all the years with constellation work, I have kept it on the back burner. I don't have anything on my constellation page about it, because I always felt it would be too confusing. So, but this is a time, just as I was just speaking about, let's use all our resources. That certainly, as we become in touch with this larger field of belonging. And so this workshop is about bridging two systems of belonging. And we know there, you know, there's personal, there's the collective, there's archetypal. But my thought was to bring this forward with the understanding that, you know, our ancestors paved the way for us. And astrology was the systemic art that guided them on their path. So astrology is ancient, and it is a systemic art. It is about, you know, discerning hidden connections and patterns and potentials within a system of belonging, and discerning a meaning connected to the hidden natural laws of order, and allowing the past to inform the present and how the future unfolds. So there's something that sounds familiar there, right?
Absolutely.
That's astrology. And so it is it broadens our perspective of this continuum of time that we find ourselves in. And it has been informing humans for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have a chance to kind of, play with that and see how that wants to show up in the group of people that participate in that workshop. I think it'll be really interesting. We can set up astrological constellations. They lend them, if you look at an astrology chart, it's a circle. So it's circle work. And I think that will be, really extraordinary to see how I'm just leaving it kind of loose of how it wants to unfold in our time together, but we'll probably stand in a constellation with that.
I cannot wait. This is two great passions of mine as well. I don't do astrology. I do lightly follow it. So it always fascinates me how things really are aligned and guided, and it just makes so much sense to me. So I'm really looking forward to it. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
I'm just really happy, I'm just really happy to be participating. And I think, I love your theme of kind of, being with the wisdom that has been held in the constellation field for quite a while. And sometimes it's good to have that anchoring back into, some basics of it, that this isn't a technique, it's an art and it's a lifelong journey. And how important it is for us to leave our egos. This was something I did when I came to constellation work. I really decided, because I grew up in a metaphysical family, I had the astrology, and I just left all of that at the door when I came in and, started studying with Bert Hellinger and doing the trainings that I did. And I'm so glad I did. So to enter with a beginner's mind, I think is something that is really, really valuable. And it's what I really appreciated, especially the early years with constellation work. How pure and unique the offering is.
I am so sorry I missed that round, but can you give us any insight into what it was like working with Bert, or any exciting stories about working with him? I'm sure a lot of
no idea. It's really touched. That probably says a lot right there.
Wow.
Really blessed. He was so extraordinary, and I was so blessed to be with him in what I would call his early times, probably up till 2007, where all of this was just emerging, and it was like tremendously exciting. And how he could just sit next to a person. I thought of that this morning, seeing him in Santa Barbara, one of the first times I was there with him, and just sit next to a person. The person would sit next to him. I'd never forget this. And he really didn't say anything. And you just sat and watched this person go from definitely layers of depression and not being present, and just blossom. I don't know, was it a 15 minutes? Was it 5 minutes? Was it a half hour? But I'll just never forget that. So the chair work that he would used to do, that we never really get to see that much. And his natural curiosity of, I served as a personal assistant when he was addressing an integrative medicine conference, and it wasn't a constellation conference. And just his kindness and taking his time just to be with me and visit with me and have lunch, but his curiosity about wanting to hear everyone else that was speaking, that open-mindedness. So those are some things that come to me that you don't necessarily always hear, but you get the feeling.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'm feeling that from you as well. Wow, what a blessing.
Yeah.
Well, Krista,
Yeah.
I am so excited to share this
Thank
time with you.
you. I am
Really
too.
be in your presence in November. I'm very excited. And I'm putting out there that we are still going in November. So I hope you're seeing
Yes.
that in your charts.
Yes. we just move forward, one day at a time.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this time. Sending you big virtual kisses and hugs.
It's so nice to see you in person. We've had fun
Absolutely.
talking on the phone. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. You have
Thank
a
you.
great weekend.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye now.